Roger that.
Nice shot. Bravo down. We got wounded. Enemy in perimeter. Range 200.
Welcome back, General.
Taking heavy fire. Sector.
Did anybody ever let these play for an obscenely long time just to see if anything ever happened during these?
Fire at 100.
Sadly, nothing really does.
Greetings, Comrade General. I am Lin Zhang, your senior intelligence officer. Today, as we claim our rightful place among the world's leading nations, your troops will provide security for the glorious display of our military strength. The People's Army will not tire in our pursuit of the terrorist enemy.
We are in position. Is it time?
The package has been secured and will arrive as planned. Proceed with attack.
For the cause! Attack!
GLA ambush! All units return fire! Group 3, strengthen that left wounded! There are too many of them! We must retreat! Their attack is faltering! Victory is ours! Victory in death!
The GLA hope to deter us with their cowardly
Car
attack.
bombs approaching!
We will now
All
strike
units,
back and
fire!
destroy the GLA. Make them pay, General. Unit lost.
Adjusting gas.
Well, 1 minute in, and there's already been a nuke unleashed on a civilian location.
Ready here. Hold them down. Right, we are moving tank. Keep it steady.
There's going to be quite a few interesting things at play here, just because we finally get to see what the GLA is actually like, but also because this is one of the few times where you get to play as a non-standard superpower, I guess. Most of the time in strategy games, you play as the Russians if there needs to be a bad guy, or the Germans, I guess, depending on the year of the conflict. Good guys are generally represented by the USA, British, maybe some combination thereof, like NATO, etc. Typically, every nation or every faction in this game has a unique flavor to them, or at least a flavor to their buildings, their way of playing, etc.
Building a
China's
Chinese
tank
empire.
division.
We will live in prosperity.
Standing attention. Immediately.
It's kind of impressive just how much they sort of were able to
China's tank division.
squeeze into every sort of building or unit. There's just so much at play that you didn't see before.
China's
This time around, nuclear reactors are actually nuclear reactors. The game features a lot more of the sort of special effects of damage over time, so certain patches of certain things will do damage to different kinds of units. For example, nuclear waste or nuclear radiation typically does more damage, I find, to all units, whereas toxins are more deadly against infantry specifically. We also saw a kind of contrast with the tutorial mission where all the sort of toxins on the ground seem to be doing only damage to infantry. Although I'm pretty sure there's some sort of stab damage, I guess we'll call it, against all units. Similarly, nuclear radiation damages buildings, and the Chinese have a nice little minefield bonus that you can, or defensive upgrade that you can apply to all of its buildings.
General, China has never suffered such great
built for
devastation.
China.
Strike swiftly and mercilessly. The GLA shall witness the true might of China's armies.
We're not going to go that quickly, but there's a couple things again to point out. The buildings that we have are pretty self-explanatory. Bunkers are defensive structures, barracks produce infantry, and so on. There's also a sort of general pace that you want, or
Another survivor of the GLA attack, General.
certain things you'll want to kind of keep as standard.
Yes.
So, for example, the Chinese, I feel like when I'm doing resource runs, when I'm getting money from supply docks and such, I typically want about 3, maybe 4 supply trucks. Their speed essentially dictates how many you want, as well as their cost.
Yes, sir.
Having too many resource getters, since they're not, I wouldn't really call them gatherers, kind of dilutes,
Unit lost.
or what's the better way to say it? Sometimes you just have too many, and it's not worthwhile.
A few tanks survived, General. Our Battlemaster tanks are vastly superior to anything the GLA can send against us. Like many of our units, they are most effective in large groups. I think you will be
Enemy destroyed. All units, advance. GLA detected in forest beyond the bridge.
As explained by our EVA counterpart in the Chinese faction, there are 3 different units in the Chinese arsenal that perform better when in groups: the Battlemaster tank, the regular infantry, and the rocket soldier.
Speaker tower will be.
The Battlemaster tank is your standard fare, doesn't really have too much special to it, other than, again, the increased the bonus for having multiples.
Tower is ready.
Additionally, the infantry is your very bog standard infantry. They're good against infantry, that's about it. Builders as well, maybe resource gatherers in a pinch. And your rocket infantry are, again, pretty standard to what you should expect.
You have discovered more survivors of the GLA attack, General.
Now, the bonus for being in groups is something that should be noted. Specifically, we can see just how quickly that our rocket infantry fire in a group of 5 compared to a group of 4.
Yes, General. Enemy tanks out
Upgrade
there.
complete.
I don't have a guide with me, unfortunately, right now, just because I'm still waiting for it in the mail, but I believe that it's mostly a rate of fire thing and not damage related. Also, TNT has a nice little counter on it.
I like the big target.
Most units tend to have some sort of secondary ability, so you can get a little bit more out of each unit.
Big.
The Overlord tank, which won't have a unit card this time around, just because, is even more so of that. Being able to have one of 3 different abilities: a bunker, a propaganda tower, or the defensive turret.
Extra large.
We've seen a bit of the Dragon tank. The Dragon tank's kind of cool. They tend to be very vulnerable, so their really effective anti-building / anti-infantry power doesn't really last all that long.
Where is the battle?
We also have the personnel carrier. It's sadly lacking It's nothing like the bunker on the Overlord tank. Infantry that are inside the personnel carrier have to dump out of it before they can shoot or do anything,
A fire strike is on the way.
which is a pretty big vulnerability.
Back from the area. You are now clear to commence your attack.
Tiger Wing inbound. Target acquired. Tiger Wing attack. Tiger leader reporting. Target
Well done,
eliminated.
Tiger Wing. Second clear. One final task remains,
are the
General.
Red Guard.
Destroy the weapon stockpile to deny the GLA
here.
control of our nuclear arsenal.
Defenders of peace. Understood.
We've seen in prior games that you can
Territory.
garrison buildings with infantry. In generals, it's better. You're allowed to actually garrison other unit types, so not just your bog standard infantry.
The People's Army.
Adjusting gas valves.
And while infantry is pretty standard, you will always want some around, just because you can capture buildings with them, and them only.
It will look real nice when it's done.
We have captured the building, sir.
I don't think I mentioned it in the training mission,
For the Red Army.
but honestly, the UI takes a lot of space on the on our display. I kind of really wish it wasn't the case,
Forces have the high ground.
especially when you're dealing with a lot of combat. It tends to just sort of stick its nose in a little bit too far.
The enemy has been crushed.
Carrying out orders. Troop crawler signing in.
Sadly, despite being a more modern title in the Command & Conquer series, at least compared to what I've done so far, there's still not much of a shooting on the move. So
I hope China's blessing.
Congratulations.
sometimes you kind of just have to force units ahead.
Dragon tank. It's Dragon away.
Some units can also be a little too finicky with their special abilities, just how you place them or where they need to move and such. The flame tank being an example of that. They have a sort of flame wall ability, but I don't really tend to use it that much. And sort of the one thing that differentiates this game from every other CNC title before it, I should say, is just the fact that there's a lot more special abilities, not only with units, which we've already discussed, but just the fact that your general can call down, in this case, repair abilities, or the ability to have units that spawn in with a higher veterans, without having to rely on a building specifically.
Weapon storage unit lost. Destroy it to prevent any further GLA attacks on our people.
Where is the
Oh, and if people had complaints about how silly it was that the USA or U.S. forces were destroying a chemical plant that ended up killing its own infantry, well, maybe not. Maybe look away for a little bit.
Where is the battle?
We are victorious.
It was a fake out. Somehow this nuclear plant doesn't have as much radiation. I don't really know why.